allegations of him beating up Cassie came out. He's denied
After the sentencing,
it,
we heard from Combs' attorneys as they spoke with my colleague, Kara Scannell.
That's absolutely wrong. The jury verdict was disregarded, and it's not supposed to happen. You shouldn't do that. Going to trial is already hard enough. When the jury speaks, you need to listen.
I think it sends the wrong message to people.
This is wrong. We have to change the way we look at it. We are incarcerating way too many people. So 2 years is an eternity in custody.
A jury, of course, had acquitted Diddy of the more serious crimes that he had been charged with, like sex trafficking and racketeering. But before the sentence was handed down today, after hours of hearing from attorneys inside the courtroom, it was Diddy's turn to address the court. And he cried as he addressed his mother, as he begged the judge for mercy. He said, and I'm quoting him now, "I don't have nobody to blame but myself. I know I'll never put my hands on another person again. I know that I've learned my lesson. I'm willing to comply with any conditions the court puts upon me." He also apologized to Cassie Ventura, saying, quote, "I lost my self-respect. I've been humbled and broken to my core. I hate myself right now. I got stripped down to nothing." I want to get right to our CNN legal analyst, Joey Jackson, CNN's senior legal analyst, Ellie Honig, and also Elizabeth Wagmeister, who spent all day inside the courtroom and has been covering this trial as closely as anyone. And you were actually inside the room as this was handed down. What was that like inside there?
You know what's interesting, Caitlin? The whole day was very emotional. You had 5 of Diddy's attorneys each speak at length for 30 to 45 minutes each. There were tears. One of his attorneys was sobbing when she was speaking about how inspired she was by her client. And as you said, we saw Diddy cry at one point. But when the sentence was handed down, almost no emotion. He was very, very stoic. When he walked out of the courtroom, he did turn around to his kids and his family, and he made a gesture that kind of made it seem like he was signaling to them it'll be okay, but no tears, no big reaction.
Well, the judge seemed to be a big focal point of today, and what he was saying in terms of speaking not only to the women who came forward here, but also to Diddy himself.
Yes, so he did speak a lot about the women who came forward, both Cassie Ventura and Jane, neither of whom were there. They did not show up to make victim impact statements, though Cassie did write a letter. But the judge spoke to Diddy, and he said, "I agree with your defense that you have accomplished great things. You've inspired so many, but that does not negate your horrific acts." And he actually said to him, "What was the reason that your abuse was able to continue for so long?" Well, it's because of your power and your resources and the fact that you didn't get caught. But then at the end, when it was really the last few minutes of the sentencing hearing, he actually said to Diddy, "Yes, this is hard time. It's 4 years, but you will get through this with your family and you can really make a difference in the world." So he ended the hearing on a very uplifting note.
Yeah, I mean, as the two of you were watching this, our legal experts, did you think that the judge made a good call here?
I think the sentence, when you actually consider what Sean Combs was convicted of by the jury, I think the sentence was harsh. I think it was within the range of reason, but harsh. But to me, the biggest takeaway from this whole thing is that the Southern District of New York, my old office, overreached. They overreached at every step of this case. They overcharged it, and that's not an opinion anymore. The jury rejected the 3 top charges. And again, that's not just after the fact. I think both of us were on record at the time saying it was overcharged. They overtried the case. There's no reason a 1 defendant, 3 victim case needs to take 6 weeks by 6 prosecutors. I tried a case once with 5 defendants on trial at once, at least 20 victims. I did it with 1 other prosecutor, same amount of time. They overtried it. And with their sentencing request of 11 years, that's ridiculous.
What do you mean they overtried it? Like they took too long?
They took too long. They put too many people on it. They let in too many extraneous details. They should have just cut right to, we used to say thin to win. Get right to it. That's it. Instead, there was too much, too much detail that did not go to the heart of the case. And finally, the 11-year sentencing request was ridiculous, embarrassing. And the judge went most of the way, not all the way, but much closer to the defense request. Then 11 years, and again, for being convicted of interstate prostitution, that's a ridiculous request and it backfired.
Joey, what was your takeaway?
So people will ask, hey, what about this particular sentence? If you look at this on balance and put it in perspective, he is a big winner today. Let me explain why. When we started out this trial with regard to the racketeering charges, he's running a criminal enterprise, he was facing life in jail. In addition to life in jail, which his liberty interest would have been gone, he was facing the forfeiture of all of his assets.
Yeah.
Now, right, he beats the charges, 3 of them at least, and he gets sentenced now on the other 2, transportation for prostitution. So now you're saying, well, what's going to happen now? You have the prosecutors that have asked for 11 years. I agree with Ellie. That was way overreach, just as the case was way overreach.
What do you think would have been a better
I think you have to stick with the guidelines. So just to be clear, Caitlin, you have these federal guidelines, and what they are is they're just advisory, and they exist so that you have some uniformity in sentencing. You don't want disparate sentences. One defendant gets 10, another gets 5. No, you have guidelines so it's somewhat even. They try to go outside of the guidelines to bring in all types of issues for which the jury has made a decision, and the jury said, no, we're not convicting on that. So why are you going and suggesting that all of this conduct for what the jury repudiated, you want to include it in the sentence? That's not appropriate. Last point, you have United States Department of Probation. They also issue a recommendation. Their recommendation, Caitlin, was anywhere from 5 to 7 years. Judge went below that and said, well, I'm not going to give you the 14 months, but I'm going to add on more time, which was 4 years. So if you look at it on balance from what he came into this case with, facing his life, the destruction of his life, to now doing 4 years and $500,000 in payment. Oh, $500,000. He was facing $1 billion in loss because of the forfeiture. So call it what you want. This is a tremendous win. And to be clear, when I say win, there are no winners. There are victims here who are reeling. We get that. Certainly his family is in a problem place. They want him home. But at the end of the day, from what the prosecutors started to where they got, this is a tremendous victory for his team, even if his defense lawyers are really unhappy, and so is he.
So you think this is embarrassing for the prosecutors, basically?
I mean, I think that they significantly, to Ellie's point, they overreach. You don't have a RICO case, which is the racketeering case, where you have a defendant. These are for mob bosses. He was not a mob boss. He's running a criminal enterprise. He's doing this. He's a party of one. In these RICO cases, you have multiple defendants sitting around a table because the government is going after you. You additionally have other defendants who maybe they would have been, but the government lets them off the hook so they could come testify against you. We didn't see any of that here. So why charge it? And I'm a big proponent. I just want fairness. Be fair and righteous. Prosecutors have a vast amount of discretion and a vast amount of power. They can put you in jail. They could destroy your life. Use it in a way that's appropriate. And I think in this case, I know he's Diddy, but just be fair. The government wasn't fair, and I think the judge's sentence reflects that because it's 4 years, not 11.
And I thought what the judge said about these not just being relationships gone wrong or toxic relationships, the judge was saying this is much more than that. And obviously accountability is important because of the women who came forward here. And obviously Diddy's team was trying to show his family's there, his mother, his children. They played a nearly 12-minute long documentary style video, I guess is how you would describe it in the courtroom today. Obviously you saw that, but I want people to just get a little bit of a sense of what was in the courtroom today.
When my baby cries.
We gotta give her a bottle then.
Know that you mean something to people. Know that you mean something to people, that you live somewhere in people's heart.
My nose fell off. No, my lip fell off. Thank you. You hear it?
I wonder, as someone who covered this as closely as you did and is as well sourced as you are with his world, what you made of that versus what we had heard, the kind of defiance from his team all along.
It felt like in the 11th hour, all of a sudden, Sean Combs realized, oh my gosh, I may actually get time and not walk free tomorrow, because he not only had that video that was filed last night before this hearing, but he submitted a 4-page letter to the judge, which was the first time that he actually said, at least in writing, that he wanted to take accountability. I have to tell you, that video, when I was walking out of the courtroom, I heard someone, who I will not say who, but they were in the courtroom, and I heard them say, what is he, running for mayor? I mean, it just seemed a little odd to have at a sentencing hearing. I had never seen anything like that. As I said, he had one of his attorneys who was crying. It was just a complete 180, that all of a sudden, you have this defense team who for months has been saying he's not guilty, the women are liars, and now he's the most moral man in the world.
I mean, Ellie, when you see that, is that typical to play at a sentencing?
Yeah, well, not the video part. I mean, that's new, and I thought it was, look, it was too slick, in my view. I think it probably backfired. But it is typical to see this type of duality at sentencing. I mean, that's what sentencings are all about. You, as the prosecutor, know this person for their crimes, but then they bring in the families and the kids. And look, that can be heartfelt. The way the kid, I always used to say, I don't take anything away from the way the kids and the spouse feel about this person. That's fine. But what he's here for is he was convicted of A, B, C. But it's tough. Sentencings are not black and white. They can be emotional, and it's tough for judges.
So he's been famously held at this notorious place in Brooklyn as all of this has been playing out. Do we know where he'll go, where he'll serve this sentence, and how much of it he'll serve?
Yeah, so what I think happens, and it is notorious, it's not doing so well, and judges, even in meting out sentences, will reduce sentences, had it happened to me, and put on the record that it's because of this particular facility. What generally happens is
because it's that bad.
It's that bad. So what ends up happening is that the Bureau of Prisons will assess where there is availability appropriate to his particular crime, and you can make a request of the judge, specifically where you'd like to go. Most people want to be next to their family. Doesn't mean that's what's going to happen, but he will not be serving his sentence there. He at some point will be brought out with regard to the Bureau of Prisons and placed in one of those facilities anywhere across the country.
This is a CBS News special report. I'm John Dickerson. Music mogul Sean Diddy Combs was just sentenced to more than 4 years in prison. The 55-year-old was convicted back in July on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Combs had pleaded not guilty to all charges and was acquitted of 2 more serious charges, sex trafficking and racketeering, which would have led to a potential life sentence. Moments before he was sentenced, Combs apologized for his disgusting, shameful, and sick behavior. Those are his characterizations. Our Jerika Duncan is outside the courthouse. Jerika has covered this case from the beginning. Jerika, your thoughts?
This was the most important day of this case, and Combs did give a statement about 12 minutes long where he spoke directly to the court. He talked about being personally responsible and apologized for what happened with his ex-girlfriends, Cassie Ventura and Jane. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and he said moments ago, I want to personally apologize to all of the victims of domestic violence. He said, quote, I hate myself right now. I was stripped to nothing. And when it comes to that video of him beating Cassie, he said, I was sick on drugs. I was out of control. I needed help. I make no excuses. I knew better. But the judge had some very sharp words in response to Combs. He acknowledged that he is trying to do better and told him that he hopes that he continues that, but instantly went into rejecting attempts to characterize what happened as, quote, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. He said you abused your power and control you had over women you claimed you had loved. You abused them emotionally and physically. He said the evidence was massive. I was sitting right here, he said. We read it and we saw it. Images of gashes and bruises and broken doors, and I saw it in the video. It was savage. This is according to the judge. This is some of the comments that he made just moments ago in court. Alice Gaynor from WCBS is in the courtroom right now and sending out notes just to give us a sense of what Combs' demeanor is like right now. What is his family reacting to? I also want to note something that the judge mentioned in reference to Jane. She went by the pseudonym Jane, but this was also an ex-girlfriend. He said he referred to the brutal assault of Jane by saying, you kicked down 5 doors in her home, lifted her off the floor by her neck, punched her, kicked her, dragged her by her hair, slapped her so hard she fell down. Jane, quote, her credibility testified to those things, that she was a credible witness. So some sharp words again from the judge who just handed down that sentence, 50 months in prison. There will be time served, we believe, in consideration of that. So considering that, it might actually be 4 years. I'm just looking at a note, sentences 50 months of incarceration. Agnifilo, which is the lead attorney for Combs, asking for more time to list facility recommendations. Also supervised release, 5 years. No reaction from Combs. He is still sitting, and there's a $500,000 fine. You can see behind me a little bit the crowd that has been gathered here pretty much all day as the family had been in and out of that courtroom. When I asked a couple of the defense attorneys how they were feeling today, they didn't have a comment. This day was very serious. They knew that going in. Not long ago in July, when it was that split verdict, they said this was a win for Combs. But the second part of that, the most important part of that, is the sentencing happening today. Again, the judge sentencing him to 50 months behind bars.
Jerika, what other activity did we have today? Did we hear, there were the victim statements. Was this a part of today's activities? And also, did the judge make any characterization of the final sentence relative to those harsh words that you quoted him as saying? In other words, did he match the two up? Did he say, I'm delivering this very harsh characterological verdict on you, and the sentencing matches that, or did he just not make that connection?
No, he did acknowledge that the sentence that prosecutors were asking for, 11 years, was a bit of an overreach. The probation report recommended 60 months. So when you look at the probation report of 60 months, he comes up with 50 months. The prosecutors wanted 11 years behind bars. It's not quite in the middle, but it's a far cry from the 14 months that the defense was asking for. Some other things worth noting, Combs was found guilty on the 2 counts of the Mann Act. This is transportation of people across state lines for the purpose of prostitution, and that is illegal in this country. Prosecutor Christy Slavic at one point during this testimony said that this case was not just about prostitution, but violence. She emphasized the violence. And that is what we heard a little bit from the judge today when he recanted some of the testimony that we heard during the trial. Cassie Ventura, the star witness, the ex-girlfriend of Combs, who was with him for about 10 years, released a statement before this sentencing was handed down saying, I am so scared that if he walks free, his first actions will be swift retribution towards me and others who spoke about him at this trial.
All right, Jerika Duncan, thank you so much. Criminal defense attorney Caroline Polisi is with us. Caroline, what's your reaction to this judgment?
I think this is about as good of a sentence that Sean Combs and his lawyers could have hoped for. They did ask for 14 months, which is essentially time served. But when probation came in with that assessment, which was 60 months to 72 months, clearly the judge took that into consideration. Now, he downwardly departed from that, meaning I think 2 things are to note here that you heard the judge say there. One is that a sentence should be sufficient but not greater than necessary to achieve the ends of justice. And so you'll often hear defense attorneys saying that. The second is that similarly situated defendants, you want no discrepancies in similarly situated defendants. When you look at all of the Mann Act guilty verdicts sort of in this jurisdiction, this is a pretty high sentence. And so I think the judge didn't want to get out of that heartland of the sentences while taking into account the violence here. That's the biggest issue here.
Well, right. So on the one hand, you're saying Joe Schmo comes in, has a Mann Act violation. You want the sentences to be the same to hold up that important judicial principle that all people are. On the other hand, the judge, as Jerika went on at some length about all of this other material and all of the stuff the judge mentioned. Is that a part of the Mann Act charge, or is that
interesting? So it's not. So remember, it was a huge win for his defense when he was acquitted of those sex trafficking charge, which is essentially a Mann Act charge with the element of violence. And the defense actually raised a constitutional argument here in their brief, saying that, look, if you consider that conduct, the violence, the coercion that was presented by the prosecution, that's actually going against what the sentencing guidelines recommend or state, that you can't consider acquitted conduct. Essentially, he was found not guilty of that conduct, so why consider it in the sentence? The judge setting some precedent here, saying absolutely I can consider the evidence that was produced at trial. It's not necessarily going against those acquittals. There was obviously evidence of violence here. You can take into account his character, his demeanor. This has always been a tale of two different Sean Combs. The defense wants to portray him as, a lost man who has trauma issues since his father was murdered at the age of 3, with addiction issues, struggling to get by. The prosecution paints him as sort of a nefarious, devious, really serial perpetrator of violence.
So in the end here, you mentioned that the defense team will be happy with this verdict.
Oh, well, look, I mean, they wanted him to walk out. I think Agnifilo said, today we want to walk out. I think they may appeal on the constitutional grounds, on the grounds that they're going to say that the judge took into account this acquitted conduct and that they should only be looking at the actual violations of the Mann Act.
So just to catch people up with that, so if it comes out in trial that you did X, Y, and Z, but you are then acquitted of the charges in which that information came out, the defense's argument will be the judge can't take that into consideration.
Exactly.
Even though it was talked about and everybody knows about it, can't do it. That would be their grounds.
Exactly, because you weren't found guilty of that offense. They haven't proven it by beyond a reasonable doubt. However, forever, sentencing judges can take into account prior bad acts if they find by a preponderance of the evidence that those were committed. And so it's kind of a gray area there. But clearly this judge did take those factors into account to some degree, but then mitigated it as well to keep it within those, to keep things a little bit more consistent in terms of, similarly situated defendants.
All right, Caroline Polisi, thank you. CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman was inside the overflow courtroom as the sentencing was read and is now outside for us. Katrina, what did you make? What's your reaction? What did you witness?
I mean, what was striking when the sentence was finally read is how still Sean Combs was. He just sat there, his hands clasped, looking down, and it was such a contrast to earlier because I would say it was such an emotional day in that courtroom. When Sean Combs' kids spoke in court today, they were all crying. His lawyer, Nicole Westmoreland, was crying. Sean Combs got up there and said his own words, and his voice was really shaking. He was very emotional as he told the judge how this had affected his life, how he felt like a changed man. And even when the judge read this sentence, he began by praising Sean Combs, by talking about the work that he's done, the barriers that he's broken, how impressive it is, even at a young age, having lost his father, all that he overcome. But he said that all of that could not wash away the record of this case, the evidence that we saw in that courtroom. He also pointed to the fact that some of this aggravating behavior, the violence, took place even after Combs already knew that he was being investigated. And after that Intercontinental video that we've seen so many times, Sean Combs posted this apology on Instagram. The judge said, saying a lot of what he said in the courtroom today, and yet even after that, he beat one of the women who testified in this trial. So the judge was just not convinced that his behavior had changed, and he said that this had to be done for deterrence. And Sean Combs just really sat there looking defeated. He told us in court today that he was broken. He looked absolutely distraught when his kids were speaking earlier. He was crying. He was wiping his face with a tissue. And you can see really how all of this has affected him. And now he is going to have to deal with this incarceration.
And in the judge's remarks, you mentioned that, Katrina, that he started off and he sort of had a trail of the way how long did he speak for? And was he pretty much monotone the whole way, or did the judge betray any emotion in his remarks?
No, I would say that there absolutely was. And I can't say how long because he was actually still speaking as I left the courtroom. He was praising the women who came and testified in this trial and the courage that it took for them to do that as I walked out. But you could absolutely hear emotion in his voice when he was talking about all of the things that Sean Combs has accomplished. You could tell that, he is very impressed by all that he has done, by the work that he is continuing to try to do in the prison system. But all of that just was not enough to overcome the massive amount of evidence that he said we saw in this case, the violence, the extreme nature of the behavior, the length of this behavior. It happened over a decade with multiple victims, and all of that just was not enough to supersede him saying that he now feels remorseful for this, that he is repentant. And earlier in the day, the judge also said that he just wasn't fully convinced by the narrative that Sean Combs and his team have been saying.
CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman, thank you. We want to go back to Jerika Duncan, who's outside the courthouse. Jerika, they're always in these high-profile trials, people who gather around, who kind of come and pick sides. What has the reaction been in the wake of this sentencing?
I think you have people that have been out here, some that support Combs and are saying things like free Diddy, and then you have folks who are advocates and wanted to see him face some serious time. An attorney that I did speak to did make clear, though, that a lot of times in these federal cases, people don't necessarily serve the entire time. So again, Combs has already been behind bars for a little over a year. Then there's, I was told, 15% off for good behavior, sometimes 15% off the sentence. There's First Step Act credits to consider. There's a certain percentage that you can do for halfway house or home confinement, and possibly additional time off for drug treatment programs. So in the end, we don't know exactly what that really looks like in terms of how much more time Combs will spend behind bars. But again, this judge trying to send a message saying that what he did was wrong and that he did believe the credibility of those women who testified. Court just adjourned, but I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts from the judge. He looks over at Combs and says, you are going to get through this. There is light at the end to help people like him. You will have a chance, he says, to show your children and the world that accountability and change is possible.
Jerika Duncan from outside the courthouse, Jerika, thank you so much. We begin tonight with the sentencing of hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs in a New York courtroom today. A judge ordered Combs to spend more than 4 years in prison. Combs was convicted in July on prostitution-related charges. Today, he stood before the court for more than 10 minutes, apologizing and calling his actions shameful and sick. Prosecutors pushed for an 11-year sentence, while the defense argued for time served, since Combs had already spent more than a year in jail since his arrest. CBS legal contributor Jessica Levinson joins us now. So, Jessica, what was the judge's reasoning for the ultimate sentence that he delivered?
Well, I think the judge largely agreed with Sean Combs that this behavior was sick. And you heard the judge talk a lot about the evidence of physical violence, the evidence of mental and emotional violence. The judge talked about essentially a massive amount of evidence. And he also talked about the idea that there needed to be a deterrent effect here, that people need to be held accountable for these types of crimes. And that obviously when it comes to punishment, we're looking just at the person who actually committed the crime, but also at the message this sends to the public. So I think all of those things together, plus the federal sentencing guidelines, are what the judge looked at in this case.
Jessica, help me understand why the judge mentioned all of the behavioral aspects of Combs that have become so familiar. Why was he allowed to take those into account, given that those were things that really went to the charges about which Combs was acquitted?
Okay, so how long do we have here? Very recently, the U.S. sentencing guidelines changed, and they changed to say that when it comes to acquitted conduct in a federal court, that acquitted conduct is not relevant when a judge is looking at the length that the sentence should be. But there's a carve out there that says unless that conduct helped in part to lead to the conviction of the offenses where there was the conviction. And then one more layer here, which is I think there's a question as to whether or not these federal sentencing guidelines are really mandatory. There was a case back in 2005 that said that the guidelines are not mandatory when it comes to U.S. federal court judges, that they're instead just guides. But that particular case, arguably not on all fours, look to this to be an issue on appeal.
Sean Diddy Combs was sentenced today to more than 4 years in prison, and this was on 2 prostitution-related charges. It follows a roughly 2-month-long trial where Combs was acquitted on more serious charges of racketeering and sex trafficking. Attorney Chris Melcher joins us now. And Chris, thank you very much for talking to us about this. Is this sentence unexpected given the more than 11 years the prosecution had asked for?
Well, it's in line, Nancy, with the charges that he was convicted of, which were transportation for purposes of prostitution involving his 2 girlfriends at the time. And the jury acquitted him of much more serious charges of trafficking for force or fraud. And the prosecutor did ask for 11 years. The probation office, though, was recommending 5 to 7. So the judge is right in line with that. And I think that the prosecutor just really overcharged the case, or at least in the jury's perspective. And then when it came to sentencing, asked for much longer.
Out of New York City, we are hearing Diddy's attorneys speaking to the media after he was sentenced earlier today. This is live.
Yeah, we are planning to appeal.
Man, I want to hear them, bro.
We are planning to appeal. We think we have strong bases to appeal. The strongest basis is that the jury reached a verdict on coercion. It found there was not coercion, and I think the judge said coercion today as a basis for a sentence at least a dozen times. We think that is unconstitutional. We think that a jury verdict should mean more than our jury's verdict seems to mean, and so we are planning to appeal.
Absolutely. If the prosecution files a cross appeal, what would happen in that regard if they filed a cross appeal and then could Sean Diddy Combs get a higher sentence?
He would not get a higher sentence, and they're not gonna cross appeal. We're gonna appeal. We think we're right, and they'll respond to the appeal, and it'll be decided by the Second Circuit as soon as.
Tell us about the conversation you had with your client after the sentencing. Consensual. The judge clearly thought the sexual encounters weren't consensual.
Because he's biased.
Make of his remarks.
He's biased.
If anyone, I'm happy to go. So we think that's just absolutely inconsistent with the jury's verdict. I mean, the jury's verdict was resoundingly clear. There was no sex trafficking. There was no racketeering. Everything was consensual. Everything was adult, which is why he was convicted only of the prostitution offense. What we feel happened today was that the judge acted as a 13th juror, one that we did not choose, and that he second-guessed the jury's verdict.
Well, at least the judge was open-minded. At least the judge was open-minded for both sides. He gave consideration.
Did you have a chance to talk to Sean Combs? Did you have a chance to talk to your client? Can you tell us about the conversation after the sentence?
How was he?
How's your client?
How will this impact sex workers?
But he's okay to push back a little. But he's okay.
Come on, man.
Stop pushing people, y'all.
You're making it a circus now, bro.
Space out. He does feel justice was served, though. He said he takes accountability, and I felt like Diddy definitely took accountability for everything, sir. And I would like to just let you know that everything was not consensual, sir. Please don't say that. It was not consensual. Even Diddy admitted.
This is the defense team, man. Let's answer the question.
Yes, but he did allegedly.
All right, Queen. All right, Queen.
Can you talk to us about talking to Sean after this?
I'm not. Obviously, we spoke to Sean. I'm not going to talk about what Sean and we discussed. It's obviously a privilege.
We all feel comfortable bringing.
And tell us what location are you going to recommend?
No matter which community it impacts.
What are the next steps?
Why weren't the sex workers on trial today? Hey,
hold on, bro.
Where were the escorts? Stop, bro.
Thank you, guys.
Here's the question. Here's what's next.
Why weren't the escorts speaking?
We're going to try and find the right facility for Mr. Combs. We're going to ask the judge to recommend that. We are very serious about pursuing an appeal. So we have a number of things all going on at the same time. I think that's all for me.
And you got about 14 days to start doing that?
If my colleagues want to continue to ask questions.
Put that in motion.
Thank you, sir.
14 days to put that in motion.
Thank you, guys. Great job, guys.
Sean Diddy Combs' legal team, including Mark Agnafilo, speaking there. Looked like some of the... Couldn't tell if those were reporters or some of the people that were in that gaggle, getting a little bit testy with some of the people with the mic. Live look at Lady Liberty on this Friday evening, 7:07 in the Big Apple. We'll bring you any more developments as it relates to the Diddy sentencing. Of course, we were waiting to hear from Diddy's legal team. If we see anybody else step up to that podium, we'll bring it to you live.
Guess what? Diddy doesn't like being behind bars. I saw what happened to Cassie. I saw the bruises. I heard the stories. Draggings, druggings, marathon sex sessions. Hey, Judge, are you listening? I saw it. You saw it. You heard the evidence. You heard the women on the stand, what they recounted had been done to them, the beatings, the bruises, the and more. But I guess there was one person that wasn't listening. The judge. That's right. In the last hours, the judge has sentenced Sean Combs to a slap on the wrist. 50, not years, 50 months. M-O-N-T-H-S, 50 months behind bars. After a grueling 8-week trial with women on the stand recounting the worst moments of their lives, showing photos of their bruises, their cuts, their bleeding, their infections, you name it, 50 months. Okay, what does that boil down to? 50 months minus 14 months he's already served while awaiting trial. That brings us down to 36 months. Subtract from that, like the feds love to do, for, quote, good behavior behind bars. He is going to walk in about, what would you say, 2 years? Joining me in all-star panel, but first straight out to San Crouppen, joining us, investigative journalist inside the courtroom for this sentencing. He's been on the case from the very, very beginning, and he is the star of Samson's World on YouTube. What happened? What happened to this judge?
I don't know, Nancy. I mean, like I said, his tone seemed like everybody in the courtroom was like, oh, wow, Diddy is going away for a long time. And then it's almost as if, like, you know, you're punishing your kid and you're like, I am so angry you did that. And I can't believe you stole my car and you took it out and I'm going to ground you for 1 month, you know, like instead of years. I mean, it felt like he was going to lay the hammer down on Diddy. Everybody, the family was literally heads down praying. They thought worst case scenario. But then, like you said, with good behavior, with his free Diddy game program, he's looking like it's going to, people were saying 1.5 years tops that he would serve out of that 50-month sentence.
50 months, 50. Right. The max he's looking at is 36 months because he's getting time off for good, for time served. Straight out to Lynn Shaw joining us. She is the founder and director of Lynn's Warriors, which is a nonprofit dedicated to stopping sex trafficking and abuse of women and girls. Response.
I am so sick and tired of, number one, the justice system not understanding about victims of crimes of abuse, rape, sexual exploitation. I am sick and tired all the time of going to court and seeing this over and over again, victim blaming. I am sick and tired of dirty Diddy. That's exactly what he is. He's a pimp. He's a trafficker. He's a sexual offender. We have seen the pictures. We have heard from the women and some men. And I'm tired of having to explain to vulnerable people, listen, just be a warrior. Listen, just keep speaking your truth. Listen, it's going to get better, because it's not getting better. So until we really address this.
Keep speaking your truth. You know what? Why bother? That's what victims and abuse victims are thinking tonight. Why bother? Why go through all the hassle of even calling the police, trying the case, reliving all the pain, being cross-examined like you're nothing but dirt on the stand for a judge to then give a light sentence? Straight out to Troy Slayton, veteran defense attorney, joining us out of the LA jurisdiction. He's been on Diddy's side since day one. I guess you're happy tonight, right?
Nancy, I've never been on the side of Diddy, but what I am on the side of is justice and the rule of law. And what the judge did here was follow the sentencing guidelines. Although he could have been sentenced up to 20 years in a perfect world for you, he was sentenced based on what he was convicted of, which was just the transportation for the purposes of prostitution.
Okay, you can stop right there.
Of rape.
You can stop right there because you are contorting the law. That is not the law.
No,
Sam Crouppen joining me outside the courthouse. Sam, just a yes or no from you, please. Sam, isn't it true that on each count he could have gotten 10 years and run consecutively? That would have been a 20-year sentence.
Yes, you are correct, Nancy. Yes.
So he was looking at 20 years behind bars, but the judge in his wisdom gave him 50 months. Isn't it true that in court, the defense was that Diddy, Sean Combs, was actually the victim, that he had been, high for 24 years? And that's why he did the things he did? Voluntary use of drugs or alcohol is not a defense, Sam.
No, it never is, Nancy. And I felt that the defense was using that, saying that because he had been a drug addict for over 25 years, that somehow that made beating women okay. You know, I know a lot of people have done drugs in their life and they've never raised a hand to a male or a female. So me personally hearing that excuse, the defense using it, I mean, and again, he was doing Molly. Molly's supposed to make you loving and positive and all this stuff anyway. So obviously his violent, traumatic upbringing is what is really to blame for his disgusting behavior towards women.
Right, you're acting like you actually believe that. His violent upbringing, he's a multi-millionaire. He's living in the lap of luxury, yet he chose to use all of his advantage to hurt other people. And speaking of hurting other people, I want you to listen to what we've learned about the letter Cassie Ventura wrote the judge, which he totally ignored.
Cassie pens an emotional 3-page letter to Judge Subramanian, recalling that the entire world watched footage of Combs kicking and beating her as she tried to run away from a freak-off. Though defense attorneys called her relationship with Combs a great modern love story, nothing could be further from the truth. It was a horrific decade stained by abuse, violence, forced sex, and degradation, from which she still suffers horrific nightmares and flashbacks that require psychological care.
Cassie Ventura actually moved out of the state of New York out of fear to a location where she's keeping her family and her children. She's not the only one in fear. Listen.
Several of Combs' victims have written to the court urging against leniency for the rap mogul. Cassie and her parents, assistants Mia and Capricorn Clark, stylist Deontay Nash, and personal chef Jordan Atkinson have all implored the judge to consider their safety, the full measure of Combs' harm, and Combs' troubling lack of accountability as he hands down a sentence.
There was a warm and fuzzy video created by the defense team that was played in court. You brought up earlier, Sam, that there was nothing like that for any of the victims. What about the video created by Sean Combs' defense team? What was it?
I mean, it felt like, I said, like a wedding video or a Nike video or something that you play at a tribute to somebody, a happy Father's Day, a 70th birthday party. But it felt totally inappropriate that they were even allowed to play this. And think about how many of us even have this much footage, this high quality footage shot of us that we could even edit together something like this. And I think you brought up a good point, Nancy. When the cameras are on Mr. Combs, he knows how to put on that good act. But when he didn't know the cameras were on in that Intercontinental Hotel, I think we were seeing a little bit more of the real Sean Combs.
You know what? The dichotomy between what he did to Cassie in that video, then paid about $100,000 to keep it quiet, to suppress it. That was the real Sean Combs. I guess the judge forgot about that. Speaking of the video that Sean Combs' defense team used in court to snow the judge, here's part of it. Watch, if you dare.
This is a heart, because you my heart.
Oh,
all right?
Okay.
You my heart.
Okay.
May God
bless you and keep you happy and keep you thinking positive. Everything's not gonna be perfect at this time in life, and you're a good person that understands reality. So we're gonna accentuate the positives in life, because you're doing great, girl.
Bring me the barf bag. Did you see that? You want to tell me that Sean Combs has spent time with the elderly? Not just the elderly. You know who the little old lady is? That's Kim Porter's. Yes. That's Kim Porter's grandma.
Oh.
Yeah, so he's totally using his dead ex-lover and her children to get his sorry rear end, which is in a sling, out of jail. He is using the grandma.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Nancy, the video was extremely odd. It felt so inappropriate inside the courtroom. And again, the magic of editing. I think about that video without any music. It's like when we go to a movie and if you just see the actors with no music, but this video, it pulls at your heartstrings because literally the orchestrated music is making you feel this emotion of a family man, a father, a hard worker. But
I thought 50 months, frankly, was way more than he should have gotten. I do not think this is one of the better days for the defense, both in the performance and what was presented. I have a lot of issues with the whole thing. I think as you just stated, by the way, I don't think the government is disappointed for a second. I think as soon as they asked for 11 years, what that telegraphed to me is they were worried the judge was going to go too low. So, in negotiation, and it works outside the courtroom, it works inside the courtroom, the mind goes to the middle point. And they figured by going to 11 years, if the judge was thinking time served, he would cut the baby in half. That's exactly or almost exactly where he landed, somewhere between 10 and 1. He landed at 50 months. This is not a 50-month case. I suppose, to quote the judge, if he wanted to send a message of deterrence. My father used to say, my dear departed father and partner, if you want to send a message, use Western Union. That dates him and it dates me. But I just think my daughter's on the defense and she didn't do much today, but I don't think this was a really well thought out presentation.
So what do you make of the speculation that, but with time served and, that this is just his first act, he could get this down and he may serve as little as 1 more year?
There's a possibility of that. I mean, if he makes smart moves and if he does and gets, the big issue right now is where is he going to get designated? And what that means is the BOP, Bureau of Prisons, is going to do an analysis. They're going to take the PSR, which is the pre-sentence report. They're going to take the minute order and the sentencing sheet. They're going to crunch those things. They're going to then decide where are we going to put them. They will take into account, and one of the reasons I think that Tenney asked that they hold that until Monday, they take into account where the judge recommends. Yeah, Tenney is my daughter, exactly. And they take into account where he recommends. That does not bind them. But where he goes depends on a lot of factors and what programs are available. You can cut off a lot of time depending on the programs you're going to do.
So this isn't over yet, but I get your take on this.
It's not over, but let me give you.
You've been saying this for a while.
Let me give you 2 other thoughts. Yeah,
please.
Let me give you 2 thoughts. Number 1, I think, and as soon as he said today, the sentencing guidelines were 70 to 87, I said, well, that's not good news. When I said he's going to go lower now, and the reason I knew he would go lower is those sentencing guideline calculations are fraught with constitutional danger. So by going lower, substantially lower than the low end of 70 months, going 20 months lower, he insulates himself from an appeal on that. But he still has the appeal on the Mann Act application. So this was intellectually diabolical by the judge.
Anything else we need to know, or are we good?
We're good. I wish the best for Sean. I hope he learns a lesson from this. I really do.
Well, I mean, he's already been in there a long time, and the whole world got to see a really interesting process of what this case began as and what it wound up as. Mark, thank you very much for guiding us through it, and we'll need you the rest of the way. So thank you very much. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone. And
Out of New York City, we are hearing Diddy's attorneys speaking to the media after he was sentenced earlier today. This is live.
Yeah, we are planning to appeal. I want to hear them, bro. We are planning to appeal. We think we have strong bases to appeal. The strongest basis is that the jury reached a verdict on coercion. It found there was not coercion, and I think the judge said coercion today as a basis for a sentence at least a dozen times. We think that is unconstitutional. We think that a jury verdict should mean more than our jury's verdict seems to mean, and so we are planning to appeal.
Absolutely. Files a cross appeal. What would happen in that regard if they filed a cross appeal and then Sean Diddy Combs get a higher sentence?
He would not get a higher sentence, and they're not gonna cross appeal. We're gonna appeal. We think we're right, and they'll respond to the appeal, and it'll be decided by the Second Circuit as soon as.
Tell us about the conversation you had with your client after the sentencing.
Consensual. The judge clearly thought the sexual encounters weren't consensual.
Because he's biased.
What did you make of his remarks?
He's biased.
If anyone, I'm happy to go. So we think that's just absolutely inconsistent with the jury's verdict. I mean, the jury's verdict was resoundingly clear. There was no sex trafficking. There was no racketeering. Everything was consensual. Everything was adult, which is why he was convicted only of the prostitution offense. What we feel happened today was that the judge acted as a 13th juror, one that we did not choose, and that he second-guessed the jury's verdict.
Well, at least the judge was open-minded. At least the judge was open-minded for both sides. He gave consideration.
Did you have a chance to talk to Sean Combs? Did you have a chance to talk to your client? Can you tell us about the conversation after the sentence?
How was he?
How's your client?
How would it impact sex workers?
But he's okay now. But he's okay now.
Come on, man.
Stop pushing people, y'all.
You're making it a circus now, bro.
Space out. He does feel justice was served, though. He said he takes accountability, and I felt like Diddy definitely took accountability for everything, sir. And I would like to just let you know that everything was not consensual, sir. Please don't say that. It was not consensual. Even Diddy admitted.
This is the defense team, man. Let's answer the question.
Yes, but he did allegedly.
All right, Queen. All right, Queen.
Can you talk to us about talking to Sean after this?
I'm not. Obviously, we spoke to Sean. I'm not going to talk about what Sean and we discussed. It's obviously a privilege.
We all feel comfortable bringing.
And tell us what location are you going to recommend?
No matter which community it impacts.
What are the next steps?
Why weren't the sex workers on trial today? Hey, hold on, bro. Where were the escorts? Stop, bro.
Thank you, guys.
Here's the question. Here's what's next.
Why weren't the escorts speaking?
We're going to try and find the right facility for Mr. Combs. We're going to ask the judge to recommend that. We are very serious about pursuing an appeal. So we have a number of things all going on at the same time. I think that's all for me.
And you got about 14 days to start doing that?
If my colleagues want to continue to ask questions.
Put that in motion.
Thank you, sir.
14 days to put that in motion.
Thank you, guys. Great job, guys.
Sean Diddy Combs' legal team, including Mark Agnafilo, speaking there. Looked like some of the... Couldn't tell if those were reporters or some of the people that were in that gaggle, getting a little bit testy with some of the people with the mic. Live look at Lady Liberty on this Friday evening, 7:07.
So they're also going to have to find a prison that's appropriate for Sean Combs. He can't just go anywhere.
Right, and they said he needs to have drug treatment. He needs to have other therapy about all of these issues leading to the violent acts.
And to your point, drug treatment, programming, or things that can further reduce his sentence and get him to a halfway house even sooner.
Oh, wow. And then in terms of appealing this, is it likely that they'll appeal this, do you think? Or?
I don't think there's any question that there will be appeals. They're certainly going to appeal the convictions for the Mann Act convictions.
Right.
They'd have a better possibility of success if he had been sentenced to a higher number, which obviously he wouldn't have wanted to have happen. But also keep in mind, there was a lot of relevant conduct that this judge heard, and as they say, you can't unring the bell.
Right. The video.
Right. But the judge also said, I'm not sentencing you for the acquitted conduct. I'm sentencing you for the Code 3553A factors,
which are the force, the violence.
No, it's the history and background, what's necessary, not what's more than necessary, protecting society, things of that nature.
So a lot to consider here. Peter, I wish we had more time, but thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
To help break this all down. And we're reporting live here from federal court. I'm Lisa Evers. Stephen Natasha, back to you in the studio.
We appreciate it. Thanks, Lise. Thanks, Peter. Also breaking tonight, Hamas now saying it has accepted some elements of President Trump's peace plan.
And that includes the release of all remaining hostages and giving up power in Gaza. Fox 5's Stephanie Bertini is live at the Israeli consulate on the east side with all the details. Steph?
Natasha, Steve, we just learned that the president is calling for Israel to immediately stop bombing Gaza because Hamas says it's open to negotiation now. Hamas is accepting some elements of a deal put down by the president to end the war in the Gaza Strip, and that includes